Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'd like to thank you for giving us another hour of your day and another day of your time. And without further ado, I got to bring in our guest. I'm so blessed and so thankful that he decided to join us, and I'm going to let him introduce himself because that would only do him justice. Tom Luongo, how is it going today?
Rashid, it is great to be here. I confess, I looked up, I'm like, oh my God, it's almost 2 o'clock. I had to run over to the refrigerator real quick, grab a Coke so that I actually had something to drink while I did this. I just got done doing an hour and 45 minutes with somebody else. I'm like, ugh. And so I'm like, oh, I got 10 minutes. I'm like, no, I don't. I have 30 seconds. So how are you? It's good to meet you. Welcome to be. I'm happy to be here.
Would you tell the people a little bit about yourself and a little before we get started into the news, a little bit about yourself and something about your blog, because it's very
Sure.
important that they understand that.
So I read a blog called Gold, Goats, and Guns, and it's Gold, Goats, and Guns is as much an ethos as it is a catchy name for a blog. It's also a Patreon service. It's a monthly newsletter. It's also a podcast. I do all of those things in service of the same idea of just trying to make sense of a world going completely mad, and do so by looking at the intersection of finance, politics, the culture war, all of these things, and kind of consecutively and concurrently, if you want to invoke the great Tom Stoppard on this. So that's what I do, and it sometimes is a little much, but I try to make it as streamlined and as what's the word I'm looking for, linear as possible, even though there's just a lot of twists and turns to everything that's going on. So.
I want to bring something up. I was reading an article a few days. As a matter of fact, it was yesterday, and it was concerning the United States, and it brought to mind the situation we now see unfolding in the Middle East, the situation we now see unfolding in the Caucasus, in the Eastern European theater with Ukraine, Russia, and NATO. And I'm thinking to myself, are there any adults in Washington, D.C., and in London and in Brussels? Because I want to read to you something. Here is this is from Market Insider, and Market Insider has an article, and it is titled "Treasury Bond Auctions May Eventually Fail Because Investors Will See Federal Deficits as Too Unsustainable," Columbia finance professor warns. Now, if we're being warned that the deficit spending and all of the deficits are unsustainable, and it's a mathematical certainty that they are, you can never spend your way into prosperity if what you're constantly spending outweighs what you're taking in. How is it that the people who have all of these degrees that run the country don't see that, and they can continue to give money away to Ukraine and invest in war instead of dealing with the deficit, the political, the racial, and the ethical divide at home? And when you answer that, doesn't charity starts at home, then it spreads abroad?
One would think, right? But here's the ultimate red pill for you. These people don't work for us. It's that simple. They're not. When you stop thinking of them as incompetent or well-intentioned or any of those other generous things, and when you stop looking at them the way you want yourself to be viewed, and you start looking at them like they're the Joker from The Dark Knight, and they're just people who want to see the world burn for their own benefit, to prove their own, nihilistic, desires or impulses about the views of humanity. Oh, everything they do makes perfect sense then. Wow. And that's the problem. You're dealing with people who either, because the way I would like to put it, can't pass the dead hooker alive boy test, meaning they were caught in bed with a dead hooker or a live boy, or they can't, or they are literal ideologues who are either communists or globalists or whatever, or they're just psychopaths who just like stealing other people's money, or all three consecutively and concurrently. Then you have the situation that we have today, and everything makes so much more sense. And that's, I think, the part that a lot of people really have a hard time wrapping their brains around, because at that moment they have to embrace the idea, oh my God, it really is that bad. Oh my God, that guy I voted for really is just terrible. Or, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? And the natural reaction for most people is to first reject that idea,
Mm-hmm.
then tacitly accept it, but never state it openly. And they get really depressed because they really do understand that that's the way the world operates. And then they just check out and then shout down anybody just trying to like, look, this is the red pill right here. And it's the way it is. That's what I fundamentally think. So when you ask yourself those, when you see that the world that way, then you go, oh, that's why we're spending $2 trillion a year more than we're taking in. That's why Biden says, oh, we can afford 4 wars. We can't afford 1 war. You keep telling us we can't afford to shore up the border. And you think we can fight 4 wars? Like, is that air you think you're breathing? I'll just sit here and do like I'll just quote the entire Matrix while we're sitting here doing this, because this is, when in Rome, after all, right? So that's the situation. So when you think of it that way, Rashid, then you have to ask yourself the question is anybody up there have a brain? Is anybody trying to stop any of this? And then I do believe that there are people trying to stop this. I don't know whether they have enough power or wherewithal, or they can muster enough momentum in time to stop this. And that's when I get into arguments. Well, I've made many arguments about the Federal Reserve and and the banking plan. I mean, if anybody can stop this, it would be the Federal Reserve and the New York banks, because they're the only ones with the power to do so. They're the only ones with the power to be able to turn to somebody in Congress and go, no, excuse me. Did you forget who put you in power? You don't work for them anymore. You work for us. And I wonder about these things because, when you see something like the last 3 weeks with the fight for the speakership on the House floor, and you realize that we got out of that fight far more than we ever expected, right? Matt Gaetz didn't even expect to get rid of Kevin McCarthy. He expected the Democrats to bail McCarthy out. He said so on the Sunday talk show circuit 2 days before he put the motion to vacate on the floor, and it passed. No one was more surprised than Matt Gaetz that the damn thing passed. Right?
Right.
You ask yourself the question then, like, how did this happen? How did Nancy Pelosi fail to pass the Build Back Better bill 2 years ago, which should have put us on a path to literal fiscal disillusionment, because there would have been, by now, they would have already spent another $5 trillion. Because that bill was $6.5 trillion worth of spending, and most of the deficit that it would have caused would have happened in the first 3 years of the spending. That's what the CBO report eventually, revealed, and that's why Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema were able to, run the clock out on it and say no to it until it finally came out. Oh yeah, no, this isn't revenue neutral. This isn't paid for. This is going to cost us $6.5 trillion over the first 3 years. What are these people? What are these people nuts? Who are they trying to kid? So there's so many things have happened over the last 2.5 years that tell me there's something happening here. There's a, lack of a better term, a counter-revolution happening on Capitol Hill, and there's also a tremendous amount of inertia of the entrenched invested powers to try and stop it from occurring. But we keep having these moments where good things occur. And, the first was getting another term out of Jerome Powell as Federal Reserve Chair. And then, we got rid of the Speaker of the House the other day. It's a monumental event in political history in the United States.
Well, why do you, again, because I keep going back to, are there any adults in the room in Washington, D.C.? Because it seems like just one inkling of good is trounced by a ton of insanity and madness. And
Agreed.
Common sense would tell me, if I'm in a hole, to stop digging. Right. But why don't you think these people with these masters and these doctorates think that they can beat math, that they can beat science, that they can beat history? Why is that?
Because they clearly unlike me, never studied the Gibbs free energy equation, which is really ultimately what you're referencing. For those of you who don't know, I also, in a former life before I did this for a living, and before I actually even took up cigars, I used to be a chemist, and I used to actually honestly be a high energy physicist. So when I sit down to talk with someone like Dave Collum, for example, we just geek out about chemistry and physics. But Dave's is always a great conversation from any perspective. Why do they believe this? Because they're not trying to beat the math. They're trying to manipulate the math to their own political ends and sell us a lie. They know they can't beat the math. They're not trying to beat the math. They're trying to burn the country to the ground. Okay? So how do you burn a country to the ground? Well, you spend it into debtor's prison. And you start a bunch of wars and make everybody hate you. And you set one half of the population against the other. And you set up internal wealth extraction schemes that suck wealth out of Mississippi and send it to the military industrial complex in California. And you do the same thing, and you bribe New York off, and you bribe Washington off, and you bribe off Philadelphia and Detroit, and eventually, when those bills come due, you let Detroit go, you let Philadelphia go, you let Chicago go. Why? Because these people are they're worse than like fire ants or killer bees. Like, they're a kind of virus that they, by the way, accuse us of being. That humanity is a virus, is a scourge of the planet. Like the old agent, I'm dead serious. Like, listen to Agent Smith's, speech when he's interrogating Morpheus at the end of the Matrix, right? I mean, these things are all right there in front of you, and humanity is a virus. No, you're the virus, and they're just doing deep-seated psychological, Jungian-style psychological shadow projection on the rest of the world. That's who they are. And then they project that onto us and then use that to justify to themselves why they have to control us. When really it comes down to, at the end of the day, they just like power. They just like, running the world. And they don't care. And it's easy to co-opt the people that they place in power, because they've already done the psychological profiles on those people that allowed them to be put in power, so that they know exactly how to control them, either with 16-year-old girls or 16-year-old boys or a lot of money or a trophy wife or this or whatever it is, right? And like 90% of the people that are in Congress were placed there through a very, very assiduous vetting process, that they're not independent thinkers. That we have a dossier on them. We have a stack of manila folders on their desk with compromising material on them. So now the question is there a countervailing force dropping a whole lot of manila folders on the other side of the desk, saying, okay, my pile's bigger than theirs, you work for me now. Right? That's the manila folder is kind of the metaphor I've been using for a while now. It's like, when you see somebody do something like that's in service of the country, and that just seems so odd, you just say to yourself, I hear the sound of 1,000 manila folders hitting somebody's desk, and he was suddenly silenced. I fear something hilarious has happened, right? This is the quote Ben Kenobi. Like, that's what I see is happening here, and that's like, sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes 99% of the time we're disappointed. But in big moments, though, when you reach crisis points, right, that's when people do the most discordant things. That's when they look into their near future. They look into the abyss and they go, oh, yeah, I don't know how to get out of this. Does somebody else want my vote so that I can save myself? And one of the things that was really cool about the resolution of the fight for the speakership, was Matt Gaetz immediately went on to, I don't know if you saw this or not, went on to Steve Bannon's podcast and explained what was happening. And then it was Kevin McCarthy behind the scenes knifing his own people in the back, Steve Scalise, Patrick McHenry, and others, get back into power. And Gaetz said it, he's like, when we finally presented information and we finally showed proof to Patrick McHenry, the acting Speaker pro tem, he immediately called for a vote on Mike Johnson, and then voted against, and then called for a roll call vote that forced even McCarthy to vote publicly for the new guy, right? Because now they got him, not because he couldn't out himself as being the architect of the fight that was going on in Capitol Hill, because it wasn't a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was, but it wasn't a real fight. When almost everybody, if you force them into public, and you force the cockroaches to shine a light on the cockroaches, and you don't let them scurry into the darkness because you put walls around them and shine the light on them, and okay, fine, I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And that's the only way you beat these people.
So. Now, everybody that's in the chat, please hit the like button. Ken Chow, thank you for the super sticker. Please hit the like button. It's free. He's given us his time. Hit the like button. Show your appreciation and hit the like button. Now, there's another article from the same place, and it says this is from Market Insider, and this is what it says. And the reason I'm reading these and talking to you is because I'm leading to something, because it takes a lot to deploy 4 aircraft carriers to the Middle Eastern region. And I just want to read this for you real quick. It says, the U.S. can't grow its way out of its $33 trillion debt mountain, research group says. The U.S. can't rely on growth to avoid dealing with this $33 trillion debt mountain, according to researchers. The government is on track to hit a record high debt to GDP ratio by 2029. Higher interest rates means the cost of servicing that debt could be unsustainable, experts say. Now, right. Tom, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but if you continue to borrow from the future to pay for this madness of the present, and then you are surrounding nations and calling them your adversaries and your enemies, and you're provoking them and threatening them, and these are the very nations that are needed to buy the very bonds that you say that you're skeptical that will sell at the market auction. Where is this leading America?
It's leading it nowhere good, which is the point, which is why this fight for the speakership was so, important, that we're going to change that. They're saying, and we'll, again, hold them. We got to hold their feet to the fire and hope that Mike Johnson is the real deal. That, we're going to change the way spending is done on Capitol Hill, and we're going to get the single issue spending bills and not an omnibus budget. We're acting under continuing resolution right now, but that ends in a couple of days, a couple of weeks, right? So now they're actually going to have to sit down and do the hard work, and we'll see what happens. And if we start to see that process, like, everybody now has been put on notice on Capitol Hill. This is what the people want. They don't want more war. They don't want ruinous spending. They don't really want the border open. I just literally, before I chimed in, Biden's approval rating amongst Democrats just dropped 11 points.
Yep.
Right. So, like, they're all looking at getting reelected in, well, just over a year. What are they going to go to their constituents with? Oh yeah, I voted for more spending because we didn't really have any other choice. I brought bacon back to the district. We don't care. Like, we don't have any pigs left in the country, and you're bringing bacon home. Like, it's fake bacon. It's turkey bacon. Like, so no, we want you to stop. And the guy who stands up and says stop is the guy who's going to get the nomination. It's actually worse than turkey bacon. It's soy bacon and bug bacon, but with pea protein, just to make sure that we all get the metaphor right. Right. So I don't believe politics gets us out of this mess, because politics got us in this mess. Still a hardcore libertarian, still don't buy the process. But I also understand that when you push a system, whatever that system is, to its existential crisis point, that you get a move in the opposite direction. And that just because we're on this path today does not mean that we're going to be on this path, the same path, by 2029. What it means is, here we are. Here's a decision point. Are we going to change that path? Are we going to change the slope of that unsustainable path? What are we going to do about this? How are we going to change this? Because the reality is, Rashid, the world wants us to lead. The world does not want the United States to act like Rambo without a jockstrap around the world and spend ourselves in ways that make drunken sailors blush. They want us to lead morally, economically, politically. That's what they want. Everybody around the world today would be happy if the United States would stop doing the things that it's doing. Same thing that goes for Europe. Same thing goes for the British. So everybody, the whole collective West, the rest of the world wants this to change. And I can tell you that if we as a country and as a political body change our direction and change our attitude and our foreign policy and our fiscal spending and everything else, I got news for you. Money will flow into the United States in a way that we have not seen since, the 1940s, right? The 1930s, in the run up to World War II. And all we have to do is start the process of figuring out how to spend less money. And that's not very hard, since 2/3 of the money spent on Capitol Hill is waste anyway. And we could go back to a 2018 budget as a virtue signal that we're going to get our fiscal house in order. And that would change the direction dramatically. There are other things we can do technically, manipulating bond prices and we can do things. There's other things to be done. And I don't necessarily want to get into that right here, at least at this part of the conversation, to then fix even more of the fiscal problem, the interest on the debt and everything else. But if we were to start that process, have a honest to God political realignment on Capitol Hill, cut some of the spending, cut some of the waste, really prioritize what is important to us as Americans, and have that actually translate through our representatives in Congress, we're going to get rewarded by global markets. And then, meaning the price of our bonds would stop falling, the yields would stop rising, there would be more of a bid put under treasuries, and because they would be more valuable, because because the risk of default goes down. Shores up the banking system, gives the Federal Reserve the opportunity to stop raising interest rates, maybe even start the cutting cycle a little earlier than I'm expecting. Like, all of these things are possible, and this is what needs to occur. But at the same time, we're also aggressively trying to defend ourselves through the Fed by raising the cost of the dollar to drain the offshore dollar markets, because the rest of the world is de-dollarizing anyway. The dollars have to come home. The treasury bills that are overseas have to come home. And if you don't want to see a disorderly, bond market and disorderly equity markets, disorderly currency markets, I got news for you, folks. We have to figure out a way to increase domestic demand for our own debt. And I see the beginnings of that happening within the Federal Reserve System as well, and some of the rule changes they're proposing for, how banks allocate for them, how they trade them, and how they can be used as collateral in repo trades and all the rest of it. So a lot of very technical stuff is happening behind the scenes in order to. The simple way to look at it is these are just heat sinks. If you got hot money flowing back in the United States, you need to cool it down. Well, you need to dump it into a place where there's a demand for it that will cool it off, and the price won't change in that sense. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're starting to see a lot of that as well. But again, I don't know if this is going to be enough. I just know that I'm seeing the beginnings of all the things that you would expect to see when you've reached a crisis point and you have to, change the direction of the ship of state.
Now, on that, I'm thinking about something that took place a few days ago that didn't make the Western press or anything, when there was a 18 to $22 billion sell-off of U.S. debt by BRICS nations after a informal, meeting of some of the BRICS representatives. On top of that, you say that a fundamental change has to be made. How can they make a fundamental change? And we look at this. America sends a proposal on arms reduction to Russia. Immediately after sending the proposal, they then announce another huge arms package to Ukraine. we look at the United States Secretary of State meeting with Wang Yi. Immediately prior to that, a day before, the United States had provocative actions by sailing a ship dangerously close to a Chinese warship.
The government isn't a monolith at this point, Rashid. There is a fight happening within our own government. We are in a period of civil war at the political level. Okay, so what I just described is one side of that war. You're describing the other side of it, where the vandals are running around the world trying to put policies in place and trying to get Russia and China on tilt, effectively, if in poker terms, to get them to do something dumb. They're trying to goad them into doing something that will then justify the wider conflict that will then propagate through Congress, like that will result in trillions of dollars in more spending. It doesn't matter. We're going to war in the Middle East. If you ain't noticed, like you just referenced 4 aircraft carrier groups, either this is a massive game of brinksmanship or this is war with Iran. You know, let's think about this. Remember what happened after 9/11? So Saudis flew planes into the World Trade Center. It doesn't matter whether or not it was an internal operation. It doesn't matter. Just go with the basic narrative of what happened on 9/11. Saudi assets flew planes into the World Trade Center. And we went to a war with Iraq. Palestinians attacked Israelis, butchered them, and now we want to go to war with Iran. Do you see the two-step? Okay? Because now you got everybody going, well, is it really the Palestinians? The Palestinians are really just Iranian agents. Well, okay, that may be true in some way. But Hamas as an organization is a lot more complicated than just an Iran proxy. So someone is selling somebody a bill of goods. So that's what I'm seeing. This is just a casus belli to try and get us to go to war with Iran. And now, Israel is lashing out against Iranian, quote unquote, Iranian proxies in Syria and Lebanon. You know, humanitarian crisis now happening in Gaza, in order to try to get the Iranian, and then positioning all these assets, U.S. military assets, in theater in order to goad the Iranians into, well, you know, hey, if a conflict is inevitable, strategically, go first. I'm an old martial artist.
Me too.
Like, dude, like you want to win a fight? Go first. The fight's inevitable. Punch him first before he punches you. Like, you know, counterfighting works after the fight starts. But you start, trust me, old counterfighter, man. Like, no one, you know, yeah. Like, come inside, baby, and let me introduce your ribs to my fists, but and my feet and my elbows. But you still, if you want to win the point in a point sparring tournament, or if you want to win the street fight, go first. Punch him in the mouth. Strike him to the neck. Do whatever you have to do. It's what Putin did in February 2022. He saw that the fight was inevitable. He knew exactly what was going to happen. Zelensky was going to attack the Donbass. So he attacked en masse across all of Ukraine and went first and put Ukraine on the defensive, put NATO on the defensive. Clearly, that's what they're trying to set Iran up to do, so that then they can then run the exact same propaganda script, you know, now against the evil mullahs as opposed to the evil Putler, and we do the thing. Like, it's an age-old process here. These people have been doing, like, and I got news for you. This is a very British thing. The British are very good at this. They've been doing this crap for 300 years, and they've gotten us to do it and get us involved in it for 120 years now. And it's very, very sad. And we should be smarter than that as Americans, to allow and I think Americans on balance are far smarter about these things than they were after 9/11, after Gulf War I, or after Kuwait. But it's the same script was run, right? I don't know that we're going to be able to stop this rush to war anyway. I just don't. And I've heard from too many people who have family in the military saying, yep, my daughter-in-law's being sent overseas. They're selling the house in Virginia because they're going to be deployed for 3 years. Like, this is coming or whatever. So, I mean, I've heard this from too many people now.
Now here it is. You have a big misstep by the war planners and the leaders. Now there were war games that took place recently and a few years ago that war gamed these various scenarios in the Middle East, and each time Iran won because of the weapons that were supplied to it by Russia and China, and they were able to sink multiple U.S. carrier groups and everything. Now, when we look at this situation that's building, and we see the civil war going on in the U.S. government and the continue to spend more than what they're taking in, how is this a sound policy, especially when Iran is one of the largest gas and oil producers? And check this out. They control the Strait of Hormuz, where 30% of all the oil and gas transit every day of the year. And on top of that, America is already in an economic tailspin. So to initiate this war is almost tantamount to playing Russian roulette.
I agree. This is Cleavon Little in Blazing Saddles, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like I'm not allowed, and I certainly wouldn't say it. I'm not allowed to say what he said in the movie, because Blazing Saddles clearly couldn't be made today. But yes, we know that these situations are real. We know that, when I do the hardcore analysis of this, right, we can wipe out Iran's, military defenses all along the Persian Gulf. Like, we can carpet bomb that into oblivion. The United States isn't as much of a paper tiger as some people would like to believe, and Russia, Iran, their military assets aren't as weak as other people would like you to believe. So the neocons on Capitol Hill, the Peter Zeihan's and whatnot will all tell you, they're all paper tigers. Russia's not a military power. And on the other side, you have the Russian sympathizers, the people who've done a little bit of work to understand the Russian and Iranian military capabilities. America's a paper tiger. They don't have a real, and like, neither of those two things are true. Okay, that's the extreme. That's in Wall Street terms, that's people talking their book. Okay. The reality is that the American military is still far more powerful than people want to give it credit for. And oh, by the way, our adversaries have weapons that are far more powerful than we want to admit. Okay? Meaning, if we decide to start the war with Iran, Iran will sink. Iran and or Russia will sink the carriers. We may get our pound of flesh, but I got news for you. Like, what comes, the counterattack is going to be just as bad, if not worse. And are we prepared to lose 4 carriers? Because under the penumbra of the hypersonic missile technology both the Russians and the Iranians have, aircraft carriers aren't force projection assets. They are target practice.
Yep.
And everybody knows it. And when you've lost the threat of, you'd never want to go to war. You'd never want to retaliate against the U.S. because the U.S. would then carpet bomb you with oblivion. So no one would ever dare sink a carrier. Is that calculus still on the table? I don't think so. Talk to Lindsey Graham. Someone's telling him that'll never happen. I got news for you, Lindsey. That'll happen, because the people that we are now up against, and this is the thing that you want to argue here. This is the interesting part about this. What if this is a Thucydides trap? Martin Armstrong brought this up in a private blog post on his site the other day, that we're being baited into this as the existing power by the rising powers in order to flip the tables, in order to create that moment where it galvanizes the rest of the world against us. And then I got news for you. who benefits from that? And the obvious one, and I'm not talking about Russia and Iran or China or anybody else. I'm talking about who benefits in the West. Because if the United States loses everything, its moral authority to lead the world, its political ability to govern itself, its border, its control of the value of its currency and its debt, and everything else that goes on, and the rule of law, and all the other things that are under unbelievable attack, and you trace the history and you trace who's funding all of those other projects outside of the war zone, you come to the conclusion that the very people who are doing the most damage to the United States are our best friends and allies over in Europe. They're the ones who benefit from this because they're bankrupt far more than we are. They were bankrupted in 2008. We've been bailing them out since 2008 when the whole Eurozone crashed. And it was only from the forbearance of Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen spending an entire generation's or nearly an entire generation's worth of wealth generation from the U.S. taxpayer to keep Europe afloat that has kept them where they are today. But if you get the United States into a war it can't win, then whatever capital is left in the United States goes back to Europe, which is what they want. What they're desperately afraid of is all that money leaving Europe, a smoking ruin, and coming here. The last thing they want is the United States to, for lack of a better term, get its shit together politically and everything else. We, as a country, have to resist the siren's call of both war and civil war in order to get out of this. If we don't avoid either of those two things, the rest of my life, I'm 55 years old, going to be 56 in February, is going to suck a lot. Okay? Yeah. And I got news for you. There will come a point where I'm like, yep, I'm done. Smoke them if you got them, folks. I don't know what else to tell you, but, you got baked beans, you got sardines, because I don't know where the food's coming from under that scenario. Like, it's going to get bad in a way that you better know your local cattle farmer. You better know your local feed store operator. You better have a local mechanic. Yada, 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 yada. Yeah. It's going to get that bad because the level of deflation that will occur will make the 1930s look like an Amish barn raising. And that's the trap we're being sucked into here. And in some ways, I almost understand the Russians and the Iranians. I like to say this. The Iranians created the game of chess, but the Russians perfected it. Right? So if you don't think that they've thought this one through to this at this level, you're not doing the analysis. And if I can see this, then the cooler heads at the Pentagon should be able to see it. The non-traders left at the State Department should be able to see it. And the non-traders that on Wall Street who are backing some of these players on Capitol Hill can also see it. And then we have the question is that cohort of people strong enough to stop Joe Biden and the people behind him, the Anthony Blinkens, the Victoria Nulands, the Hillary Clintons, and the rest of them? I don't know, Rashid. I don't have a good answer for it. I can tell you the comment that's below us, that's been sitting there, a very astute comment, Collie Beans, because Belgium crossing the line and selling and taking the money that they stole from the Russians and giving it to Ukraine. Yeah, that destroys the old financial order. It makes a mockery of the idea of foreign exchange reserves. Makes a mockery of the entire post-World War II financial order.
Yeah. I think all of those people that are running the government are crazy as hell. That's just my take on it.
You're not wrong, dude.
So we're gonna go to the comment section. I see a lot of comments in here, and I don't want to ignore any of them. So you've addressed the first one by Collie Bean when he says, "But won't the world associate America with the confiscated Russian billions in Europe? How would the rest of the world ever trust the West again after that?" And I know you just uh, addressed that.
They won't.
And it's jumping so fast. Hold on one second. MZ, I'm sorry, it says same script. U.S. and Europe don't know how to sustain their standard of living without neocolonialism and resource extraction. Let's say,
Yeah, well, no, MZ is not wrong. We do know how to do it. Just the people who are in charge of the governments in those two places don't know how to do it. Well, they know how to do it. They just don't like it because it means that everybody else gets rich, not them. Like it's not that hard. Like that. I mean, I agree, MZ. Yes, but we do not have to practice colonialism of any stripe. We don't have to do it, but we are. But again, at the same time, I think that old system is finally failing. I mean, look at what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa and the Sahel region. France is losing all of its colonies, and the British are desperately trying to hold on to all of the flashpoints that they left behind when they retreated. Right, India, Pakistan, China, India, Iran versus everybody in the region, the Kurds, Saudi Arabia, Egypt,
the Malvinas Islands.
Yeah, the Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh, we can go all through all of them, right? Greece, Turkey, yada, yada, yada.
MZ says, also says, military may be high tech, but the U.S. is way too casualty averse and domestically unstable to move on Iran. That doesn't mean that they won't.
It doesn't mean that they won't. And that is part of Iran's and Russia's calculus in order to spring the Thucydides trap. That's my point. Like, you spring the trap, we lose 4 carriers, and then the United States people have to realize quickly that this isn't the fight that they thought it was. So, yes.
Hit the like button, everybody. Please. Tom has been so gracious to speak with us and answer your questions. Please show him respect and hit the like button. Medi says, Medi is in the building. How's it going, Medi? Medi says, our military is no longer as dominant as it once was thought to be. Then he goes on, says, Mr. Luongo is 100% right. And he says, our carriers and every soul on board is being put in harm's way, trolling for trouble it cannot handle. What say you on the matter?
Yeah, I agree with that. I just, again, like I said, I just caution everybody to understand. Here's the thing: our carriers off the coast of the United States, very, very powerful, right? Again, depends on where they are in the world. As you know, as agents of humanitarian aid in times of crisis, after typhoons and this and that and everything else. So, like, there's nothing when put in the current position like they are now. Yes, they're target practice. Because the Russian military architecture is about defending within 1,000 kilometers of Russia's border. It has no force projection capabilities beyond that. And one could even argue that can't even go that far. It's really just how they can respond with missiles. But they have no ground force or naval force projection of any sort. The blue water Russian Navy, relatively speaking, is a joke, folks. Their submarines are no joke, but understand that that's what we're talking about here. But the Russians have weapons that we do not want to deal with at all, folks. We just don't want it, and they've made it abundantly clear. I go back to look. This whole thing started to accelerate in early March of 2018 when Putin gave a State of the Union address and announced all the weapon systems that we're now fearing today: the Kinzhals, the S-500s, and even the S-550s. All of these things. The one with the nuclear power plant the cruise missile with the nuclear power plant that can just circle the Earth for the next 90 years and then just kind of go, you know what? I think we'll go there. Oh, they went to Chicago. Like, all of these weapons. And when he gave that speech, and even if he didn't have those weapons at the time, and he didn't, what he had announced was that they were out of testing and into the early stages of production, right? That at that point, I noted a tenor shift, in the neoconservatives on Capitol Hill. They immediately went into overdrive because they understood that they had a very narrow window to prosecute how they could, get Russia into a war. Because at some point that we could win it, because at that point, because once they got enough of those, there's nothing we can do other than like get into an uncontrolled nuclear conflict that no one wants to see, including even the crazies on Capitol Hill that are now acting like George C. Scott from Dr. Strangelove.
All right, let's go to the next one. MZ says the European plateau has so few natural resources, they need the U.S. imperial system to stay afloat.
Agreed. I've been saying for a long time, the whole argument about climate change is promulgated by European globalists. Why? What's the war on carbon about? Who promotes the war on carbon? Those who don't produce any carbon. Not that hard. What have they tried to do? Shame us into thinking that we don't need carbon, while they have gone out of their way to try and find new sources of carbon around the world and bring pipelines into Europe. And in some ways, the U.S. has been very clear about not letting Europe have any more carbon come into Europe that we don't control. It's a very ugly and internecine fight here, but it's real. And the neocons like in the Obama administration launched Syria under Hillary Clinton in order to do this, in order to affect bring gas from Qatar and the North Pars oil gas fields and from Saudi Arabia through Turkey and into Europe, cutting out the Russians. That was the whole point of that, but part of it. And then everybody got their payoff. And basically the Brits went around going, well, Erdogan, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And they got everybody and then tried to get everybody what they wanted. So then they can then gin up a war with a chemical weapons attack to demonize Assad so that we can get the coalition of the willing to go in and atomize Syria. And the only thing that stopped that, interestingly enough, was the British Tories in Parliament defying David Cameron. That stopped that dead cold. And that was an interesting moment. Mm-hmm. And I find that moment very interesting. How did that happen? that a Tory-dominated Parliament for the first time in a century told a Tory prime minister no about anything, no less going to war. Very interesting moment. Go ahead.
Mehdi says the Iranian military is far more tech savvy. They make their own missile systems and anti-defense systems that are comparable to proven Russian systems. What would that mean to an American assault on Persia?
I mean, look, I am not an expert on the physical capabilities of all of these weapon systems. I will say this up front, okay? I don't doubt for a second that the Iranians won't try to defend themselves. They won't even successfully defend the first wave or even a second wave. But eventually they will be overrun because air defense systems can be overwhelmed. We know how to do it. Everybody knows how to do it. The Russians know how to do it. The Iranians know how to do it. They've proven it to the Saudi Arabians. They've proven it to everybody. They know what to do. Like at some point, I'm not saying that the Iranians don't have tremendous missile capability. They do. Their counterattack is going to be CENTCOM in Bahrain. Their counterattack is going to be the carrier groups. And the truth of the matter is it's not that tough to understand here. If you want to invade or if you want to beat Iran in a war, you are either going to turn it into a parking lot or you're going to invade it. And then you have to ask the question, with what army? Because we don't have that army. We don't have a 20 million man army to conquer Iran, because that's what it's going to take. So, and logistically speaking, you've got carriers at the end of a 6,000 or 8,000 mile long supply chain. You've got Iranian missile systems at the end of a 30-mile supply chain. Who do you think has got the advantage there? This ain't rocket science. Mm-hmm. Hell, rocket science isn't even rocket science.
Uh, David Lazarus says, I think that the real protagonists are the elites on Wall Street. The U.S. is facing losing reserve currency status. The carriers are now targets and will probably be sunk by 2025.
What I'll say to David is this: I think that's the easy narrative that's being put forth by. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's City of London. Okay, Wall Street for a long time was beholden to City of London. They are no longer. I've made this point in other podcasts. I've been making this point for 2 years that with the transition away from LIBOR to the secured overnight financing rate here in the U.S., we've and our banking systems over the last 4 years have diverged and split from Europe. If Europe's banks collapse, it will not blow back on the American banks. They've ring-fenced themselves against a collapse of the European debt markets. Okay, this is a very important point. And that's why City of London has to get us involved in a kinetic war, because they can't run a financial war. Jerome Powell has made it abundantly clear that he said there's room in the world for more than one reserve currency. The head of the Federal Reserve stated this, representing the New York banks on Wall Street, I might add, at a Humphrey Hawkins testimony on Capitol Hill to the Senate Banking Committee, where Elizabeth Warren, screwed up her face and made that face that she makes when he said it. Meaning, Powell was telling you what's behind the policy. It was that we're trying to exit the global reserve currency. It doesn't work for us anymore. It's destroying America. Okay? So there are some banks on Wall Street, Bank of America and Carnegie, Bank of New York Mellon and others, that are absolutely all in with the whole WEF, Davos, European communist thing. And then there are others that are not. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, absolutely not on board. Citigroup, absolutely not on board with it. Citigroup, unfortunately, is so vulnerable because their derivative books are so leveraged to the hilt that Citi is kind of like, I don't care, I just want to survive. That you can see Citi like on both sides, like straddling the fence, trying to figure out who's going to win. They're doing the sticking their finger in the air and trying to figure out who's going to win thing. The other ones are absolutely dead on one side of it. If you don't think that, then talk to me about the 4 years of the Trump administration, which was run by Goldman Sachs. And Goldman literally set the United States up to get out from underneath City of London with SOFR and trying to get Judy Shelton onto the FOMC Board of Governors and all the rest of it. Judy Shelton, a confirmed gold bug, mind you. Right. An architect of the idea of putting of issuing treasury bonds with a gold redemption clause in order to deal with our fiscal problem. Okay, we can deal with our fiscal problem by putting gold out, as my friend Vince Lanci likes to put it, throw gold out on the yield curve, and we can minimize the amount of dollars we have to pay out to the debt that we're issuing, redenominate the short-term debt in 30 to 50-year gold redeemable bonds, which will cut the interest payments down, and then investors get their return with a rising gold price. And now all of a sudden, the Federal Reserve wants a higher gold price. The Treasury wants a higher gold price because that's how they're going to keep their investors happy. It's a very elegant solution. And I got news for you. If the Treasury were to do that, I'd be the first guy buying them. So again, not trying to take anything away from the Iranians, not trying to take anything away from the Russians, but I want to make sure that everybody understands you don't want to take anything away from the Americans as well. Do I think we could win this war? No, I don't. That's what scares the crap out of me. But I don't want to win this. One, I don't want to fight the war in the first place, and two, I don't want to lose the war because the downstream effects of losing the war are catastrophic to the world, folks, to the absolute detriment of the entire freaking world. This is not the U.S. evil empire narrative is exactly that. It's a blue pill. It's bullshit. It's partially true. And like all good lies, they have to be partially true. And as Americans, we're all ashamed of the government because as decent Americans, we're all ashamed of the government we live under because we're all like H.L. Mencken. But don't let that overwhelm your analysis of what's actually happening and who's actually trying to destroy the United States, because it isn't forces within the U.S. That's my point.
Joel Bradford, he says this. These neocons, and I've said this for the longest, and then other major websites pick this up, major channels pick this up, but I've been saying it for the longest. The neocons have no reverse gear. They will see a wall and accelerate into it, and I was like, and my take on it is like they'll run into the wall and see that it's an immovable object, and yet continue to go forward and back, go forward and hit their head, thinking that maybe one day that they can get through this immovable object. It's absolute insanity.
Yeah, that immovable object is Russia. The Russians have been fighting the British and their neoconservative spooks for 300 years.
Yeah. The Crimean
If anybody
War
knows how to fight the British, it's the Russians. Moreover, if anybody has figured out how to use the predictability of those same neocons who have no reverse gear and see a wall and want to accelerate into it, Putin's like, I'm a judo guy. You want to go that way? I'll let you go that way. Okay? And it may cost me a lot in the short term, and it may cost me something politically, and it may cost me a few thousand men, and it may cost me this, and it may cost me a few $1 billion or a few $100 billion. So,
let me go to one more statement in here. Let's see. This thing is jumping so fast on my end that it's hard for me to see. As soon as I got ready to highlight something, it jumped again. Let's see. Okay, we'll just put Collie Beans up there because it just jumped to him. And I've been saying this too. He says, yes, exactly. City of London is deeply involved. I tell the people that's why one exchange is tied to the other exchange. And also, no matter what war you see America is involved in, you see the UK or Britain is involved in it. These are two peas in the same pod.
Absolutely. But again, what's happening within, we've got to remember something now. There's the City of London and there is Brussels. They are not the same thing.
Right.
They are not the same thing. City of London is always trying to triangulate everybody against everybody else to their benefit. So they'll triangulate Brussels and the United States against each other in order for them to get what they want. And then they'll cozy up to Brussels and get on another issue to go against the Russians, and then they'll triangulate with the Poles to triangulate against the Hungarians to get something for Ukraine, and the same thing with, they play everybody off of each other to get what they want. What I've noticed, the thing that I didn't understand this 10 years ago when I first started really doing the geopolitical analysis. I morphed into what I am today. It's been a slow process for me to understand. And look, like everybody else, we're all on a journey here. We're all learning every day, right? We all get better. The longer we do something, the better you get at it. And what I learned is, and when I look back on it, and I look back on what I learned about Putin and the way he maneuvered things, what he was doing the entire time since intervening on behalf of Syria in 2013 to stop the invasion by getting Assad to get rid of his chemical weapons, which Assad didn't even have, but he brokered the deal. From that moment forward, what he was doing every time was to blunt and expose the puppet hand of the crown, City of London, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And because at times they're on board with each other and other times they're not. That to set the table for the day when everybody could look up and go, okay, that's enough. Yeah, I'm done with you guys. And where the Brits then turn around and try and do their standard thing, and everybody goes, yeah, no, you're not allowed in the door anymore. And I think we're getting very close to that moment. And the United States is really the last country where they still have that immense amount of power. They had it in Poland, and then they lost to Brussels in the latest elections. The Poles didn't have a very good choice. They either had the British puppets in the Law and Justice, or they had Donald Tusk, who works for the European Commission in Davos. Like, the Poles were screwed. Okay, but the issue now is, can we get rid of the last of these unbelievable, horrible British neoconservatives feeding the Lindsey Grahams and our Joint Chiefs of Staff and the rest of them this terrible information about what's going on? Because most of it's a lie. Most of it's freaking lies. What comes out of GCHQ, if these people ever tell the truth, it's amazing. It's a monumental event, but we'd never know because there's so much mis and disinformation out there that these people seed into the zeitgeist. We have no idea what's real and true anymore. Like, what is the blue pill? What is the red pill? Right? I don't know what I mean. Is that air I think I'm breathing? No, I'm smoking a cigar. Like, it's crazy. So when you do that analysis, but you can look at the way things have gone since March of 2022. Nothing has worked. Nothing has worked. Blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. Didn't get Russia to go to war. Blow up the Kerch Strait Bridge twice. Didn't go to war. Send incursions across the border into Russia and kill some civilians. Didn't work. Launch drones at Moscow. Didn't work. Launch, missiles at ammo depots off of Rostov-on-Don. Didn't work. The Russians are like, doesn't matter. Crunch all you want. We'll make more. We don't care. You're not going to get us on tilt. We can see what you're doing. And they're like a pit bull that has never had anybody put any restraints on its behavior. And then finally somebody turned around and go, you know what? That's enough. I'm in charge. And they're still kicking and screaming. And they're still scratching up your arm. And they're still trying to bite you. And you may have to put the dog down. Or eventually, the dog will never submit, but eventually you'll get it to the point where you're going to put a muzzle on it and stick it in the cage. And that's what's and that's what's happening to the British right now, and they cannot handle this. Mm-hmm. And Brussels and the rest of them, they all want the same thing, and then they're fighting for control of who's going to win and who's going to be in charge after they destroy the United States. That they agree on. But they're also triangulating against each other to try and come out on top after they've destroyed the United States. And all the United States has to do is not get into a war and not have any of the states secede after a ruinous 2024 election. They lose both of those fights. Neither of them come out on top. They lose everything. So if you expect them, under those circumstances, what do you expect them to do? And that's what's just scary. Rashid, I'm going to have to go in a couple minutes just because I've been talking for 5 hours today, and I've got a place to be. But yeah, like one or two more, and then we're going to
one more, no two more, sure. Because you've been gracious, and that's what I was going to say. You've been very gracious with your time, and I want to get you back. I don't want to alienate you. So
no, you're good. I overscheduled myself today, dude. That's my problem. It's not that's on me, not on you.
The last question, but we're going to continue after Tom leaves. Perseverance Chameleon he's from the UK, and he says this is how the City of London has always operated. The British never relinquished their hold on any of their former colonies, including the USA. What's say
Bingo. Absolutely, man. The British have been trying to get the United States back since the day after Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown. For 140 years of our history, they were our greatest enemy. And then Woodrow Wilson comes to power, and all of a sudden they're our greatest ally. And we're fighting World War I for them. Mm-hmm. And then we're fighting World War II for them. And now they want us to fight World War III for them. Mm-hmm. And I got news for you, Winston Churchill. Americans are great people. And we eventually will do the right thing after going through every other opportunity first. And you know what that one's going to be? This time we're not going to war for you. That's the way we have to look at this as Americans. And if we do that, we'll win. That's the ultimate red pill.
That said, thank you, man, for your time. I gotta get you back on here. I already know they're gonna be asking me in my emails to get you back on here. Thank you, Tom, so much.
Thank you, Rashid. You have a great weekend, and everybody, we'll meet again. Hopefully it won't be to the tune of Vera Lynn's we'll meet again while the bombs are going off. But there you go. Enjoy your weekend. You guys be well.
All right, be blessed, man. Everybody, hit the like button, please. Tom was so gracious enough to give us his time, please hit the like button and show respect for him. Also, to go back to some Ascended Awakening, a shout out I did not miss you. It was just jumping, and I was trying to scroll back to try to find what you said. So I did not miss you. I see my guy, Mehdi, I didn't miss you too. I was trying to get 2 more of your comments, Mehdi, but the thing jumped past you, and I couldn't scroll back to get you. So now I'm Ascended Awakening. He says, "Sorry, late again. I'm watching from the start, and also F the F the dude from yesterday." Let me put this up on the screen. He's talking. I know who he's talking about. He's the F the dude from yesterday show. Got his panties in a bunch. His MF strained voice. I wanted him off. Kept not letting you speak. I'll slap him silly. Let me go up here to, let's see. I've been missing Holly. I know she's in the chat, and I was gonna, let's see. And I know Ken is in the chat. Let me try to see if I can. Did I put up his? Yeah, I did put up. Tom reminds him of Gonzalo Lira. Let's see. Oh, David Lazarus. I missed a couple of his, but let me go to Mehdi real quick. Let's go up a little bit. Give me a second. It's gonna take me a second. Okay. Okay, we're right here. Mehdi says, let's see. Kali Bean says this. False flag incoming. You better believe it. And Mehdi agrees, says 100% exactly. They have no clue what real war is at this level. All right, here we go. Perseverance Chameleon also says the U.S. military is running on its prior reputation. Mic drop moment. Boom. In the hopes of intimidating the Arabs into compliance with the status quo. That's exactly what's going on. That's exactly what's going on. And Mehdi says Russia has Kinzhal hypersonic missiles in range of these carriers. Russia's Navy is not a joke. It is exactly designed to carry 40 plus missiles that can be launched at a single ship. Also, when we look at this, not forget it for a second, forget Russia. What about all of these CO2 missiles that Iran has? Let me highlight this. I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't get a chance to highlight this. I'm getting your Joel. Thank you so much. I got to put this in the super chat. This live was fire. Keep up the great work, Rashid. I'm trying. Hey, and check this out before I finish my thought on that. I'm working on some more great guests for you guys. I'm telling you, I am. They're trying. At least 3 of them are trying to see if they can free their schedule. They were all booked this month. They told me that they would have been on here had they not been prior bookings this month alone. So I'm trying to work to try to see if I can get a few of them on in the coming days or next month. So I'm working behind the scenes. So it's just not what you see here. It's a lot going on behind the scenes. But thank you for the comment and thank you for the super chat. But let's look at this. What about the CO2 missiles? What about those hypersonic missiles? What do you think Iran got in exchange for giving Russia the drone technology? Do you think they just gave it to them just to be giving it to them? I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back, because I know that the empire is really after me. Russia and China know that they have the United States has eyed taking Iran out because they want to make greater Israel. On top of that, more so than that, they view Iran as the very underbelly, like they did with Afghanistan, to get at Russia and China, India and Pakistan to bring them to yield, because if they can take out Iran, then they can get right there in Russia, China, India, and Pakistan. Even though India doesn't want to believe this, they're after India too. They're not just after China and Russia. They're after Pakistan and India too. They want anybody that may be able to challenge them economically. And look at India's population. If they got on the track that China is on, maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the line, they could challenge America's economy. So they want to surround them with military bases to have a controlled rise, the same as they did with Japan. Japan's economy was out. Now, this is a U.S. Protectorate and a U.S. ally. The United States destroyed the growth of Japan because Japan was building everything. For those of you who may be a little older, do you remember in the 80s, everything, TVs, everything was coming out of Japan. What we see coming out of China, we were seeing it coming out of Japan. Cars, TVs, computers, everything. And as the Japanese economy grew, America started seeing that it may be a threat to the U.S.'s economy. And so they sabotaged their own ally and destroyed the Japanese economy. And now the Japanese economy is in a tailspin. And they live just like America, off debt. Off debt. So if they can rid this one powerful regional nation, Iran, because Iran lies in a very strategic, very important place. It's at the crossroads. It's near the Caucasus. It's near the Baltics. It's near Europe, the rest of Europe. It's near the Middle East, but not so quite in the Middle East, even though we say the Middle East. And it is the bridge into West Asia, or the so-called Eurasian mass. This is amazing. And they know this. If they can conquer Iran, they can break the BRICS. Notice that America goes after Iran. After Iran is expected to be a full member of BRICS. After Iran has joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? And they have their eyes on that. They tried it with South Africa through sanctions, said if you didn't do this, if you didn't help us with this, we were not going to allow the IMF to give you a loan. And they were demanding that South Africa stop using certain energies, just like Tom Luongo says, and allow for low carbon emissions and all of this stuff. And South Africa was like, hey man, half of the country may be in the dark. And the United States held that whip, and then China said, hey, if you don't get it from, you can, since being a member of the BRICS, get the loan from the AAIB or the BRICS banks. And so they went after India to stoke flames between China and India, because India has these visions of grandeur. They want to be China. They want the place that China has ascended to. They have always been envious of the rise of China, especially after 62. So they patted them on the back, they pumped their ego, and then they promised them a place in their order. That's why India is still playing the fence. India wants to be a part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India wants to be a part of the BRICS. India wants to be a part of the Global South. And at the same time, the Global South, the BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are starting to integrate the use of the yuan in their payment systems. They're starting to be more directed towards China's economic engine. And India is refusing to accept oil payments in yuan, even as it is hurting their own domestic consumption and is hurting their domestic trade, because of the promises that the United States, Great Britain, Australia, and New Zealand has made to it. So they saw India and see India as a weak link. But what they see most as a weak link is the one nation that does not have, as they see it, which it does, have the capacity to quickly put together a nuclear deterrent. You say, well, South Africa was a nuclear state in the early 80s. Most people don't even know that. South Africa could reconstitute their nuclear weapons like that. They gave them up. They were a nuclear state back then, had nuclear weapons. So, and South Africa produces a lot of good weapons that are sold around the world. That's why the United States started saying that South Africa was exporting weapons to Russia, and they did not like that. Okay, so I know the news don't tell you this, and I know the news don't report, because South Africa is a African or black nation, and they don't want you to believe that the technology there is in a way that is on par with some Western technology. They don't want that, but I got to tell it to you the way it is, and not the way that they would like it to be. So now they see Iran, the newest member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the newest member of the BRICS, Oh, my phone and stuff is going off and I can't even get to it. But so you guys please forgive me of that. That'll stop shortly. But it has no official nuclear weapons, right? And its longest range missile, I think, is 2,500 kilometers. So they believe that, hey, the risk is real. We can lose a lot, but if we go against militarily, if we go against South Africa, it would be too unpalatable. If we go against China, right now, there's no way that we could beat the Chinese in Asia. If we go against Russia head on, then that's the end of us and the end of them, blah, blah, blah. So the weak link now to try to break the momentum of the BRICS, to try to stop the reorientation of the world towards the global south and the non-aligned nations, is to go after Iran, because if you can stop Iran, one of the largest oil producers, one of the largest gas producers, and it sits on the strategic Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, then now you can throw all kinds of monkey wrenches into the plans of a new and fairer and more just world. You can throw all kinds of monkey wrenches in the plans of a new reserve currency and a new monetary and financial system outside the scope of London, Brussels, and DC. And this is why they are aimed at Iran, because they want to prevent Iran from being a factor, which means, in essence, they want to break the backs of BRICS Plus, and they want to break the backs of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so that nobody afterwards could look to these as a viable system. Look, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization did not intervene militarily, and we destroyed Iran. The BRICS banks or the BRICS nations didn't intervene, and we destroyed Iran. So if you put your eggs in that basket and you alienate us, then guess what happens? Guess what happens? We'll destroy you too. And then they believe by doing this that they can cower other nations and pull them back into the fold of dollar hegemony, which means that the dollar and the U.S. empire gets to live a little bit longer, that the British monetary system continues to stay afloat, and that the European Union continues to stay united and to be one of the junior partners to the American empire. That's what's going on. Let me go to the chat real quick. This thing is jumping. Yeah, let's see what Joel said. Let me go down here. Oh, Pedro is in the building. Pedro, another U.S. liberty in the offing. You better believe it. You better believe it. Let's see. Here it is. Joel, he hit the nail right on the head. America is going to be in for a world of hurt if it attacks Iran. If they attack Iran, I'm telling you, they've been preparing for this. Again, people, when they look at these events, they look at them compartmentalized. They don't look at them as an entire picture. Now, why would, if the United States announces that that they are looking to deter, quote unquote, deter Iran's aggression, and next thing you know, Sergei Lavrov is in Tehran meeting with the leaders of Iran. That didn't happen by coincidence. He didn't go there to talk gumdrops and lollipops. They went there to strategize. And I want you to think about the madness of the empire while we're on this subject. Think about this. America, and this is not about Israel, okay? We've done multiple shows about that. We'll do some later, but this is about America. We're talking about America, and we're talking about all this other stuff. But we're going to use Israel in here because this is the proper point to say this. America and the UK are flooding Israel with weapons. They're flooding Ukraine with weapons, right? And they're sending warships, warplanes, and troops to the region where Iran is strategic in the region, right? Importance, I should say, important, geostrategically important. And they're telling Iran it's aggressive and an escalation if you provide weapons for your allies. I want you to think about that. This is what they said to Russia. How dare North Korea might be prepared, be sending weapons to Russia. So what? You openly say you're sending them to Ukraine. This is what I'm talking about. They believe that they have the inherent right to do and give their allies anything. Do I have a new channel member? Okay, let me see. I gotta highlight this. Yeah, highlight. Oh yeah. Thank you for joining the channel. Thank you so much for joining the channel, Perseverance Chameleon. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Look. Oh, and content is dropping in just a day or two or a few days. I'm trying to get the stuff together, okay, for the channel members. But listen, they think that they have the right, the inherent right to give whomsoever they desire weapons, to bag whomsoever they desire. And that you don't have that inherent right or treaty-bound right to do it to whom you deem to be your allies, even if those allies may be in your sight terrorists. Now, look at this. Here we go right here. What just happened here? Okay, the screen went off for a second, and I thought the show was ended by mistake by StreamYard, but it didn't. It just went black and came back on. So, I want you to think about this. Turkey deems the Kurdish group, the YPK, as terrorists, right? Turkey is an ally of the United States. The United States is arming and supplying these same people with weapons to attack Turkey. And if Turkey defends itself against that, then the United States say, whoa, these are our allies. But you want us to be on your side against Al-Qaeda. But you want us to be on your side against ISIS. But you're on the side of the Turkish version of ISIS and Al-Qaeda? But how is that justified? It only is justified in the mind of a lunatic, a narcissist, in bizarro world. Oh, they may be terrorists to you, but they're my allies, so it's okay for me to arm them. I promise you, I give you my word that they won't use my arms to attack you. And then within a matter of days to weeks to months, guess what they do? They use those very arms to attack these nations, and then America say, "Oh, we lost count, and we lost sight of the arms shipment." Right? Now I want you to think if that was done to her. She's already screaming about the possibility that China may be helping Russia. She's already screaming about the possibility that Iran has transferred drone technology to Russia, to the top of her lung, and the European Union follows in suit. And says, this is unacceptable that Iran has listen to me good, that Iran has an independent national policy and that Iran is supplying drone technology to Russia. You're supplying drones and weapons to Ukraine. Why is it unacceptable that Iran does that to its economic and geopolitical ally? So when you turn over and look at Hezbollah, and they say, well, these 4 carrier groups is to keep the escalation down. No, it is for escalation. It is absolutely for escalation. And how is it that you believe that I'm gonna be scared of you because you put a few guns outside of my apartment building or outside of my home, and I got a house full of guns, and I'm telling you that if you fire on me, I have the advantage. For you to continue to get the weaponry, you got to sell your ships back to bases to refuel, to resupply, to rearm. But I'm going to sink them on the way back. Perseverance can be do as I say, not as I do. Holly says it like this: rules for thee, but not for me. And she says they're sociopaths. Right. That's what sociopaths think. It is an affront to international law for you to go and supply arms. We want them unarmed so that we can kill them better. We want them at our mercy. How dare you arm them and give them a slingshot or a rock to throw at us when we have all of the weaponry at our disposal to bomb them into the Stone Age? This is absolutely insane. And nobody ever questions them on this. Kirby talks about, yesterday he was talking about, we're not for escalation. As a matter of fact, let me pull this up. Before we go off there, let me see if I can pull this up in my email real quick, okay? I saved it because I couldn't believe he actually said this. Let's see. Let me see if I can pull this up. Here it is. Here it is. I think this is it. I believe this is it. Let's hope this is it. Let me skim it for a minute, and then. All right. Yeah, this is it. This is it. So I'm gonna put it up on the screen, okay? Like I said, when I tell you something, I don't just tell it to you, opinion-wise. When I tell you this, I want to bring proof. So because everybody tries to skew the lines for their benefit, and that is a shame. We are supposed to be giving people the truth. If we are in the capacity to talk to the people, it should be a no holds barred about truth, because that's the only thing that will benefit a person, the truth. All right. So I'm going to bring this up. Give me a second. Let me bring this up real quick. And we'll read part of this, because when I read the article, I was like, what? How can you even detach some of this stuff? How can America compartmentalize some of this stuff? Pedro, I see you. South Africa also worked with Israel. That's right. In the apartheid days, South Africa and Israel worked together on Project Coast, looking to make race-based bioweapons. That's right. Israel took a part of that during apartheid, and the whites of South Africa and the Israelis experimented on the black population in South Africa with bio and chemical weapons. Most people don't know that. And they also worked together to acquire nuclear weapons. That is true. All right. What he's saying. Persevere. He says, that's why we appreciate you, Rashi, and I appreciate each and every one of you all for giving me your time and your ear, making this possible. God is good, and he's not good just tomorrow or yesterday. He's good every day. Thank you. Let me pull this up real quick for you. Yeah. Here we are. So we're going to read a little bit of this, and I want you to see the insanity of this, okay? This is absolutely insane. Now, before we read part of this, I want to preface the article with this. America is in Syria illegally. Okay? So let me give you an analogy. Of course, I'm the king of analogies. Let me give you an analogy that I want you to think about while we're reading the article. Perseverance Chameleon has a home. I break into his home. I didn't get the permission of his family. I didn't get his permission. I didn't come through the front door, the back door. I came through the window, and I'm occupying the room. Perseverance comes home and say, hey, man, he has his weapon. You got to get out of here. Or I'm going to be forced to use deadly force because I got to protect my family. I say, I'm not going anywhere. Perseverance shoots at me. I shoot back at Perseverance, wounding and killing some of his family members. When the police arrive and they ask me, what was I doing in the house? I said, I'm fighting terror in this house. And how dare, all I did was fire back in self-defense. Well, the police say, well, did he invite you in? No. Did his family invite you in? No. Did you come in through the front door? No. Did you come in through the back door? No. Do you have the keys to the house? No. How did you come about his house? Oh, the lights were off, so I came in through the window. But he shot at me, so I had to shoot at him back because that's self-defense. Do you understand how they would be looking at you and be laughing at you? Huh? So with that in mind, and I see you No Way Out. Before I go, I got to read what No Way Out says, okay? He says, by the way, the U.S. created Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Caucasus Emirate, Harkat al-Mujahideen, Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, just to mention some of the 25 or more, or more, No Way Out, or more, 25 or more. All right, so let's go to this real quick. The article. So listen, the title of it is U.S. launches strikes in Syria after targeted attacks against American troops. All right, now listen. The Syrian government, or whomsoever the Syrian government or the armed forces of the Syrian Arab Republic designate the authority to, have the vested rights to fire on any invader. What if, think about this, Syria says, you know what? There has been 36 mass shootings in America. We're going to deploy Syrian forces to Alabama. Do you think that America would allow that? And if they got to Alabama through treacherous means and America started firing on them, does the Syrian forces have the right to defend themselves when they have violated the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of America and they are occupying sovereign U.S. territory? And if the answer is the Syrians have no leg to stand on, then how the hell can you give America even a crutch to stand on in her argument? Knowing that, let's go into the article a little bit. It says, earlier in the day, the Pentagon confirmed that 21 U.S. personnel suffered minor injuries from 16 attacks that began on October 17th. Most of those injuries, 19 of them, were classified as traumatic brain injuries, and all have since returned to service. The U.S. has placed blame for the attacks on, listen to this, quote unquote, Iranian-backed militia groups. Now, before we go further, why must there be Iranian-backed militia groups? If America is illegally occupying territory in the Syrian Arab Republic, why can't it be disgruntled Arabs from Syria that are doing that? Why must they be tied to Iran? Syria is a sovereign territory. Why can't it be angry citizens? Remember those terms? I tell you what they do. They use these terms as negative connotations, and then they use them later on to justify their military engagement against those people whom they deemed as tyrants, insurgents, terrorists, right? Regimes, and Iranian-backed militia groups, right? Okay, let's go further. The U.S. Department of Defense revealed late Thursday that forces had fired strikes against 2 facilities in Syria following earlier attacks against American troops and allied troops in Iraq and Syria. Today, at President Joe Biden's direction, U.S. military forces conducted self-defense strikes. Remember what I told you? I'm in Perseverance house illegally, and he asked me to leave, and I refused, and he fired on me. And I fired back, and I tell the police, well, it was self-defense. Well, first of all, to undercut my standing as self-defense, do I have a legal right in his house? And if not, isn't that breaking and entering, burglary, right? And if so, he was within his rights to use deadly force to remove me from his house, right? This is the law that is used in the streets of America, in the courts of America. Why do they turn it up on his head when it pertains to American intransigence and occupation? Huh? Okay, listen. It goes further and says this. You guys ignore that alarm that's going off in the back. I can't get to it, okay? It's on the other side of my green screen. It's on my little table over there. And I don't want to get up and inconvenience any of you all. So listen, it says, today, at President Joe Biden's direction, U.S. military forces conducted self-defense strikes on 2 facilities in eastern Syria used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and affiliate groups, the release said on Thursday. Now, isn't that a declaration of war? Because remember that Iran is in Syria at the invitation of the legitimate and recognized government of the Syrian Arab Republic, at the behest of the president of the Syrian Arab Republic. So for an outsider that is illegally present and occupying 1/3 of that country to fire on a sovereign nation that is in a country on invitation to help them rid them of the scourge of Western terrorism, isn't that a declaration of war already? According to what a declaration of war is. So when you look at that, you already see why there's an escalation with the deployment of not 1, not 2, but 4 carrier groups in the region, right? So let's go further. And we won't be on much longer, okay? I just want to make this point, okay? And then Hey, listen, if I get back in time, around 6 or 7, if I get back in time, we'll try to do a short, maybe hour stream if I get back in time. But you guys, please, you guys, if I do it, you guys got to show up and you guys got to hit the like button. You got to help the show. You know what I mean? You got to do this. I mean, that's all I ask for you. If you want to donate, you can donate. If you want to like and share, like and share. But we've got to do something because the algorithm, these people continue to take subscribers from me on a daily basis. And I'm working hard. But listen what it says here. It says, these precision self-defense strikes, they went out of their way to say self-defense strikes, are a response to a series of ongoing and mostly unsuccessful attacks against U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria by Iranian, there we go again, Iranian-backed militia groups that began on October 17th. Now let's examine that statement right there. These precision self-defense strikes. For this to be a self-defense strike, there must be some legality behind your presence in both Iraq and Syria. Well, let's examine this. Were you under a UN mandate to be in Syria? No. Was there a UN resolution passed to allow you to ignore the Syrian government and put your troops there? No. Did the president of Syria give you a mandate? No. Did the government of Syria give you a mandate? No. Did the military of Syria give you a mandate? No. Did the people of Syria give you a mandate? No. So now we have taken away your legality of being in Syria, which means that your strikes were an act of war, not only against the militias that you claim to strike, but they were an act of war against Iran and an act of war against the host nation, which is Syria. Now let's go over to Iraq, because it used Iraq and Syria. According to not only Eastern reports, but coming out of Western media outlets, there have been multiple parliament resolutions, resolutions signed by previous and current prime ministers and the presidents of Iraq that demanded the full withdrawal of all U.S. and coalition troops, hardware, and weapons from the territory. If that is the case, and it is, because you can pull it up, and we see Iraqis striking at you on Iraqi territory at Iraqi-owned bases, how do you have a legitimate leg to stand on when you are the outsider that is illegally present in a foreign nation? I'm asking. Because they put these little things, these precision self-defense strikes. How is that self-defense? For it to be self-defense, there must be some legal basis for you to claim self-defense. You can't just walk down the street and see 6 people and don't like them and start shooting at them. They call that mass shootings. Because the person that is shooting has no legal justification or backing to take his arms out and just start shooting innocent people. This is what we have right here. America's just walking down the Middle Eastern, North African streets, just firing at people. And continue to talk about bases. Well, our bases in the Middle East. Well, Iraq resides in the Middle East. Syria resides in the Middle East. We see that Iran is in West Asia and the Middle East. They can't pick up and go like you can. You're in North America, so who's in the wrong? Your nation resides some 5,000-6,000 miles from the point of contact. So then who is the aggressor? Huh? Who is the aggressor? Man, I'm telling you, let's see. Let me check this out real quick. No Way Out says, and I got one of my computers, so I'm looking at this. No Way Out says, by the way, Iran declared 2019 the U.S. official to a terror state and United States Armed Forces, United States Central Command, and DOD as terror organizations. Yeah, that was in response to both the U.S. and the U.K. Designating the IRGC as terrorist entities. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Let's go. Serious Biz says, They don't declare war now because they have to abide by rules of engagement, Geneva Conventions. So what they do, they just have conflicts. And then they openly state that it's war without a declaration of war. That's what they do. This is what sociopaths do. Right? And look what Perseverance says right here. Let me put this up here. Alas, the rules only apply to those who are unable to defend themselves. Boom. Mic drop moment. Let's do that again. Boom. Mic drop moment. Right there. So, but they got the wrong one because Iran is well able to defend itself. It's not a Rudy Poo nation. Iran has advancements in all kinds of areas in military. We saw that with the downing of America's advanced drone near Iranian airspace. With their own indigenous air defense system, they didn't use the S-300. And let me tell you how advanced Iran has gotten. You know the upgraded S-300 system that Russia sold to Iran. At the time when Russia sold it to it, Iran did not completely trust Russia. So guess what the technicians did? Went in and rewrote the code in the S-300 themselves. This is the truth. Go Google this. The Iranian technicians were so, listen, Turkey can't do that. The nations that are buying these weapons, they can't do it. Iranian scientists and technicians went in and rewrote the code that operates, that controls the operation center of this. I'm telling you, they redid this. I'm telling you, man, that shows you just how intelligent these people are. Now let me get to some. Let me scroll down. Give me 1 second. Let me scroll down. Rashid, this is no way out. Let me see if I can highlight this. Rashid, when I'm at home at the time you stream and it is not too late, I'm here. The U.S. is illegal in Syria. The only country who is in Syria illegal, the only country who is in Syria legal is Russia. Iraq war and occupation were illegal. Well, it's two nations that are in Syria legal, Iran and Russia. I think that you meant to put that in there. So yeah. Now listen. Oh man, I just want to talk about this stuff. I have somewhere to be. I have an appointment I have to get to. Listen, I want to thank each and every one of you for hitting the like button. I want you to share, like, and subscribe. Tell others about us. Check and see. I want you to also do this for me. Check and see if you're still subscribed, because the algorithm continues to unsubscribe people. And keep a watch on the subscriber count up there, and you'll see what I mean about every time it grows, the next thing you know, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. I want you guys to see that on the channel, and they continue to do this. So the only way we can beat that is by being a little crafty, and do our best to subscribe and hit the bell icon and bring others to the channel so that we can continue to grow and continue to pump out this truth. On that note, thank each and every one of you for joining me and for giving me your time. I am humbly appreciative of this, and I mean from the bottom of my heart to the depth of my soul. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, whether you contributed through money, or whether you contributed through conversation, or whether you contributed through likes or dislikes, or whether you contributed just by watching or listening with your time. Thank you from my heart. I say that to you. Know that I love you if you love truth, but know that the true and living God, he will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. I love you all. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you.